I rise to appeal the ruling of the chair because the proposed amendment is clearly germane to Senate Bill 6362A, the bill before the House that we seek to amend. Both Senator Kavanaugh's Bill 6362A and the amendment relate to the extension of both the tenant and commercial eviction moratoriums. Senator Kavanaugh's legislation would extend the eviction moratoriums until August 31st of this year. The proposed amendment before you would extend the eviction moratoriums until June 30th of this year, which mirrors the CDC's recommendation. More specifically, this amendment brings New York in line with the federal government guidelines. Madam President, in the past, the majority has repeatedly ruled amendments proposed by the minority are non-germane. However, I would ask that in this instance, what could possibly be more germane than a proposal to change a date on the bill in question? And honestly, from a human perspective, what could be more germane or more important than providing meaningful assistance to our fellow New Yorkers who are rightfully concerned about losing their homes and properties? We all agree there are thousands of tenants and landlords who are in desperate need of relief now. One study that I read, it was a survey by the Census Bureau, found that 42% of New Yorkers are living in households not current on rent or mortgage. This widespread housing instability is also affecting the economy and placing a severe financial burden on property owners. Just about a week ago, I had the privilege of meeting with an elderly woman who depends upon a rent payment from the apartment that's attached to her single-family home to help her meet her financial obligations, and they're not that great, paying her taxes, getting her prescriptions, going to the grocery store. She's devastated. I can't describe to you how emotional this meeting was. She's absolutely devastated financially and emotionally because she hasn't been paid rent in well over a year. Well, what won't help her or anyone else who's in this situation is another moratorium. Throughout this pandemic, this body has taken steps to extend support to struggling New Yorkers and our small businesses. This support included a moratorium on evictions intended to protect individuals and families who were unable to make their rent payments as a result of the state-mandated shutdown of our economy. Unfortunately, hundreds of thousands of small business landlords were not offered similar relief. They continued to do their best to meet their financial obligations while still providing housing to their tenants, including those who have been unable to pay. But the time and the need for such extraordinary measures is rapidly coming to an end. Government officials across the state, including those in New York City, are preparing for a total reopening of our state. This reopening should include a June 30th end to the eviction moratorium consistent with the federal government. Small business landlords should be given back control of their residential and commercial private properties. To support both our tenants and our property owners who have suffered during this historic pandemic, the Senate majority should focus on delivering the more than $2 billion in federal relief funds that are intended for tenant relief. Move the funding, no more excuses, no more stalling with moratoriums. This is the only way, the only real way to ease the financial hardship of tenants and to allow local property owners to recoup the significant loss of rent accrued during this moratorium. These dollars will be reinvested in our economy as property owners will finally have the resources to meet their full financial commitments and make improvements to their properties. Extending this eviction moratorium beyond the federal guidelines would ignore the reality that our state is reopening and people are returning to work. Restrictions on nearly every industry have begun to be lifted, while our small business landlords continue to have their property rights restricted. This bill, again, should be amended to reflect the CDC guidance and should expire once that date has passed. During the Senate Housing Committee debate on this bill, I asked Senator Kavanaugh, the sponsor of the bill, why the need to extend the moratorium beyond the CDC recommendation. And the response included some comment or feedback about public health in New York State's COVID numbers. But we've seen how more and more people are being vaccinated. Thousands and thousands of New Yorkers have been vaccinated. And just yesterday, the headlines of so many newspapers and media outlets was all about the governor pointing out that our positivity rates are the lowest since last October of 2020. Hospitalizations are down, lowest since last November. So based on the data and the science, as well as the federal CDC guidelines, I don't see any real public health justification for extending these moratoriums beyond June 30th. Rather than continuing to kick this can down the road and watch people fall further and further into debt and into despair, this body should show real support for struggling families of both the tenants and the property owners by not extending the moratorium beyond the CDC recommendations, but by demanding that OTDA disperse the federal tenant relief funding. We all know, we've had these discussions here on this floor and in committee meetings, that if this money is not distributed by September 30th, it can be clawed back and sent back to Washington, D.C. or another state that will get the money out to the door. We don't want that to happen. I don't believe that anyone here wants that to happen. But again, enough delays, enough excuses. We need to move the federal resources. I believe we can accomplish this critical victory for tenants and restore the property rights of hundreds of thousands of small business landlords in our state by working with the executive and OTDA. But the Senate majority must be willing to step up and do more than just put forward these moratorium bills. For these reasons, I'm asking my colleagues on both sides of the aisle who truly care about tenants and small businesses in the 5 boroughs and in every county of this state to vote in support of this amendment today. Failure to overrule the ruling of the chair is a failure to provide real help to our struggling neighbors. Thank you, Madam Chair.